Hi guys, today I'll be doing Chemistry Paper 2, May June 2022 series. This is Paper 2-1, which is 45 minutes, and there is 40 questions, and each question is 1 mark. Okay, let's go. Okay, question 1. Which two gases diffuse at the same rate at the same temperature? Right. So in order for two gases to diffuse at the same rate, they must have the same MR. So which of these two gases have the same MR? Right. Let's see. Carbon monoxide is 12 plus 16. It will be 28. Carbon dioxide is 12 plus 16 plus 16 is 28 plus 16, 38. It will be 44. So this is not answer. Carbon monoxide and nitrogen. So nitrogen is 14 plus 14, which is 28. Oh, you see here, 28, 28 is the same. So therefore, answer is B. Right? For them to diffuse at the same rate at the same temperature, they have to have the same mass. Okay, molar mass. Okay, question 2. A student measures the time taken for 20 grams of magnesium to dissolve in 50 cm cube of dilute sulfuric acid. Which apparatus is essential to complete the experiment? Right. So, he's measuring time taken, so you need a stop clock. He's measuring 50 cm cube, so you need a measuring cylinder. You don't need a thermometer because you're not measuring temperature here, but you do need a balance to measure 2 grams of magnesium. So therefore the answer is 1, 2, and 4, which is A. Okay, question 3. The numbers of protons and neutrons and the electronic structure of 4 particles are shown. Right, which particles have the same chemical properties? So, firstly, for same chemical properties, obviously the element has to be the same. So what determines the element is protons, right? So therefore Z is incorrect because two of they must have the same proton number. Okay, so Z is out of the equation. Next, the electronic structure has to be the same, right? For them to have similar chemical properties. If they're different, they have different electronic structure, they will have different chemical properties, right? And in case so that means W is not an answer, and which leaves X and Y. So let's double check. Even though the number of neutrons are different, it doesn't matter because neutrons do not affect the chemical properties of elements. So therefore, which particles have the same chemical properties would be C, X, and Y. Which substance should be pure for the intended use? A drug for curing disease, this one obviously has to be pure because you don't want side effects, right? You don't want side effects that will potentially cause even more harm than the disease you're trying to cure, right? The rest, you don't have to be pure because like obviously when you want to wash your car with water, the purpose is not to, you don't need pure water to wash your car. You don't need pure petroleum for fractional distillation. You don't need pure limestone for ion extraction, right? All of these can be impure, except drugs. Okay. 5. Metals and ionic compounds have similarities and differences in their structure and properties. Which row about metals and ionic compounds is correct? Okay, so first, metals and ionic compounds, they both contain positive ions, that's correct, right? So C and D cannot be the answer. The difference, ionic compounds conduct using a sea of electrons. Only ionic compounds contain anions. So A is the correct answer because only metals, right? Only metals conduct using a sea of electrons. Ions have a charge, so that's how they conduct their. That's how they conduct electricity using ions. But metals conduct using sea of electrons, so the answer has to be A. Which diagram represents the outer shell electron arrangement in a nitrogen molecule? Right, so this is a Lewis structure. So the first thing you have to know is that each nitrogen atom has to have 7 electrons, right? So not 7 electrons, 5 outer electrons, right? So if we look at these nitrogens, for the nitrogens in B only have 4 electrons, so therefore B cannot be the answer. Okay, next we need to know how many bonds does nitrogen form. So nitrogen forms 3 bonds. nitrogen looks like this. So the answer is D, right? So there's one bond here, one bond here, and one bond here. So therefore the answer is D, right? And you see each nitrogen has five has 5 of its own electrons. Okay. Next. Question 7. The equation for the reaction between barium chloride and those dilute sulfuric acid is shown. Which row shows the state symbols for this equation? Right. So, firstly, you need to know that barium chloride is soluble, right? So therefore aqueous. So C is wrong. Secondly, we also know that hydrochloric acid, dilute sulfuric acid, right, is dilute sulfuric acid, so that means you add water to it, that means it's aqueous. So therefore D and B is wrong. The only answer left is A. But if you didn't know that sulfuric acid needs to be aqueous form, you can also know because barium this one is this is a solid. Barium sulfate is a solid, right? It's insoluble. Therefore the answer has to be A. Okay. Question 8. The relative atomic mass AR of an element is determined by comparing the mass of one atom of the element with the mass of one atom of element Q. Okay, so what is Q? Okay, so this is based on determining AR. So the relative atomic mass is based on 1/12 of the mass of a carbon atom, right? So Q has to be carbon. Okay. Next, the equation for the reaction between aqueous lead nitrate and sodium chloride is shown. If 100 cm³ of aqueous lead nitrate of concentration 0.1 mol per dm³ is reacted with an excess of aqueous sodium chloride, which mass of lead chloride is obtained? Okay, so they give you the concentration and volume of PbNO3 to this one. They give you the concentration volume of this. So first step, you have to find the moles of this, right? How to find the moles? You take, so since concentration equals mole over volume, to find moles, you take concentration times volume equals mole, right? So 0.1 mole times 100 cm³, which is essentially 100 over 1000 dm³. So 0.1 times 0.1 will get you 0.01, and this is the amount of moles of lead nitrate you have, right? So after you do that, to find the mass of lead chloride, you need to use the equation to look at the molar ratio. So in this equation, you see that if you have 1 mole of lead nitrate, you will get 1 mole of lead chloride. So if you have 0.01 mole of lead nitrate, you will have also 0.01 mole of lead chloride, sorry. Okay. Now you have the mole of lead chloride. You need to 0.01 mole times the MR, okay? Times the MR to get the mass. So the MR of lead chloride is 207 plus 35.5 times 2, okay? Times 2. So this will give you 278. Okay, so therefore your answer is 0.01 times 278, which is 2.78. So for question 9, answer is C. The diagram shows the electrolysis of concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated aqueous sodium chloride using carbon electrodes. Which electrodes is hydrogen produced? Okay, so firstly you need to know that hydrogen is a positive. Hydrogen ions are positive, right? So therefore hydrogen ions would if hydrogen is produced in the electrolysis process, it would be produced at the negative electrode, which is the cathode, right? If hydrogen is produced, it will be produced at the cathode because the cathode is negative. The positive hydrogen ion will be attracted to the negative cathode. So therefore, electrode 1 and electrode 3 cannot produce hydrogen. Okay? So 1 and 3 is gone. So comparing hydrochloric acid and sodium chloride. So you need to remember the electrolysis of sodium chloride actually. So this is actually brine. So you need to remember the electrolysis of brine, the products you get for brine. Okay. So the on the anode you will get chlorine. At the electrode you will get hydrogen, and what's left inside would be NaOH. Okay, so this is something you have to remember. So therefore, if electrode 4 confirm produce hydrogen, C is wrong. So therefore, both electrodes 2 and 4 will produce hydrogen. Aqueous copper sulfate is electrolyzed using copper electrodes. What is the ionic half equation for the reaction at the cathode? Right. So at the cathode means, okay, so you're using copper electrodes and copper sulfate as the electrolyte. So if you're using everything as copper, this is actually how you get pure copper. This is how you get pure copper from impure copper, right? So at the cathode, which is the negative electrode, right? So at the negative electrode, copper will be deposited. Okay, so which of these equations show copper being deposited would be B, because the ion would deposit into copper, which is solid, which is pure also. Okay. Question 12. Which row identifies a chemical change and a physical change? So a chemical change is something that changes the molecule itself. Okay. Physical change will only change between the molecules. Right? So boiling ethanol is not chemical because boiling ethanol is physical. Okay, you're turning it from liquid to gas. Burning ethanol, however, is chemical. Now let's see, evaporating ethanol is physical, so therefore the answer is B. Okay, so for C is wrong because burning ethanol is a chemical change. D is wrong because evaporation is a physical change. Okay, it's wrong also. So answer is B. The equation for the reaction between gaseous hydrogen and gaseous iodine to form gaseous hydrogen iodide is shown. The reaction is exothermic. Which statement explains why the reaction is exothermic? Okay, energy is released when HH and II bonds are broken. That doesn't explain why it's exothermic. The bond energies of the reactants are larger than the bond energies of the products. That is wrong because it's actually the opposite way around. The products are at higher energy level than the reactants. That's wrong because if you draw an energy level diagram, to have a negative delta H, the products will have to be on a lower energy level. Okay? More energy is released when two HI bonds are formed than when the HH and II bonds are broken. So this is the answer. Because bond breaking is endothermic because you need to absorb energy in order to break the bonds. So therefore the opposite is true for bond forming. Bond forming would be exo. So in order for the reaction to be exothermic, the amount the amount of energy used to form the bonds must be greater than the amount of energy used to break the bonds. Okay, therefore the answer is D. Acidified aqueous silver nitrate is added to a test tube containing aqueous chloride ions. The test tube is left in direct sunlight. Which row describes the observation, explains what happens in reaction mixture. Okay, so we add a silver nitrate to a solution containing chloride ions, you will get a white precipitate. So therefore, A and B is wrong. Okay, silver chloride is white. Next, observation after leaving in sunlight. Okay, so when you leave silver chloride in sunlight, the precipitate would turn gray because it will undergo reaction using the UV light right from the sun. It will actually turn gray. Okay, so this is how people usually stain their clothes in the lab. Sometimes they might have silver chloride, and then they walk out in the sun, and then their clothes will be stained because a reaction will occur that causes the silver ions to be reduced, therefore it will turn grey. Okay, the answer is D. Water is added to anhydrous copper sulfate. What happens during the reaction? So, firstly, anhydrous copper sulfate is white, right? How I remember is water generally depicted as blue, even though it's colorless, right? Like when you're drawing something, usually water is depicted as blue. So therefore, hydrous copper sulfate will be blue because it has water inside, and hydrous copper sulfate will be white. So no color, essentially, right? So what happens during the reaction? When you add water, so C and D is wrong because copper sulfate turns blue because you're adding water into it, and the solution form will get hotter. Okay, this is exothermic. Okay, so 16. Aqueous iron chloride reacts with aqueous potassium iodide. Which statements are correct? In a balanced equation, V, W, X, and Y have the same value. Okay, let's check for that. So firstly, we notice that this is standardized, so I2 is standardized. So therefore, if you have one molecule of I2, you need to have two molecules of Ki. Okay, next, if you have two molecules of Ki, you need to have two molecules of KCl. Okay, so next, if you have two molecules of KCl, that means you already have two chlorine, so two chlorine. Okay, so okay, yeah. So since FeCl3 contributes the ion to the FeCl2, V and X must be the same. So let's say V and X is 2. So therefore, each side will have two iron atoms. And lastly, we have to check the chlorine. So on the left side, we'll have 6 chlorine. On the right side will be 2 times 2, which is 4, plus another 2 from the KCl, which is 6. So therefore, 1 is true. Potassium iodide is an oxidizing agent. So so did the ion FeCl3 lose or gain electrons? Remember, oxidation is loss of electrons. So this is Fe3 plus to Fe2 plus. So did it gain or lose electrons? It gained electrons, right? So 2 is wrong because it gained electrons, right? Next. 3. A dark brown solution is produced in a reaction that is true because of the iodine. Okay, so therefore the answer is B. Which statement about acids is correct? A strong acid has a higher pH than a weak acid. That is definitely not true. Stronger acids have a lower pH. Okay. Strong acid is a proton acceptor. Wrong. No, acids are proton donors. Okay. Bases are proton acceptors. A weak acid is a proton donor. That's true. Any acid is a proton donor. Okay. A weak acid is fully ionized in aqueous solution. Wrong, because only a strong acid is ionized. Okay. Strong acid is fully ionized. Weak acid is partially ionized. The oxides of two elements are separately dissolved in water and the pH of each solution is tested. Which formation about X and Y is correct? Right. Let's see. So pH of solution of this oxide is 1, so it's a basic oxide. Right? So therefore it has to be C or D. Wait, sorry, I got it wrong. pH of solution is 1, so it has to be an acidic oxide. So the answer has to be A or B, right? Sorry about that. So the answer has to be A or B. So the non-metal oxide will produce an acidic solution. So therefore the answer is B. Okay. An acid is neutralized by adding an excess of an insoluble solid base. A soluble salt is formed. How is the pure salt obtained from the reaction mixture? Okay, so first you need to know that they are adding an excess of insoluble solid base. So therefore, there will be unreacted solid bases present in the mixture. So you have to filter it first. Okay, so A and B is wrong. You have to do filtration first, and you form a soluble salt. So once you have the solution left over, How do you obtain the pure salt? You first have to evaporate, then leave to crystallize. The answer is D. Okay. Whenever you want to crystallize something, you always have to evaporate first, followed by crystallization. It always goes in this order. Okay. Electronic structure of element Z is 281. Which statements about Z are correct? It's a metal, it has 2 outer electrons, it's in period 3. Okay, so electronic structure is 281, so it has 1 electron in its outer shell. This is actually sodium, right? If you look at the periodic table, it will be sodium. So sodium is a metal. It's in group 1, so it's a group 1 metal, so it's correct. It has 2 outer shell electrons, that's wrong. There's 1 outer shell electron. It's in period 3, that's correct. The answer is C. Okay. Elements in group 4 of the periodic table are shown. What does not occur in group 4 as it is descended? Okay, so the proton number of the elements increase, that's obviously true, right? So this is not the answer. So because down the group, the proton number increase. Proton number increase, okay? The elements become more metallic, that is true, so therefore it's wrong. Elements have more electrons in their outer shell. That is not true, so that this is the answer, because they all are in group. Since they're all in group 4, they all have 4 electrons in their outer shell. Okay? Elements have more electron shells, that is true, so this is wrong. Okay? Element M form both M plus and M2 plus ions. Which part of the periodic table is M placed? This might be a bit of a trick question to some people, because they give you group 1, group 2, group 3 and transition elements, right? So you need to know that transition elements will have variable oxidation states. For example, Fe will have Fe2 plus or Fe3 plus. They have more than one oxidation state. So answer has to be transition elements. You may get confused and think since there's only 1 plus in this one, it must be group 1. Since there's 2 plus, it must be group 2. But this is the wrong answer. Okay? Transition elements will have variable oxidation states. Okay? 23. In the extraction of aluminium by electrolysis, cryolite is added to bauxite ore. Which role describes the role of cryolite and gives the ionic half equation at the cathode? So this one you remember, cryolite function is to lower the melting point of an electrolyte. Okay? And to extract aluminium, what's the ionic half equation at the cathode? So aluminium is positive, so therefore it will be ion to metal. Therefore the answer has to be C. Okay? This is wrong because you have one ion here and you're producing three metals here, so it doesn't make sense. This is not balanced, right? Therefore the answer is C. Okay? Mild steel is galvanized to prevent corrosion of the iron. Which statement about galvanizing are correct? So what is galvanizing in the first place? Galvanizing is basically protecting a metal with another metal, right? You're just coating a metal with another metal. So galvanizing prevents corrosion because the zinc forms an alloy. That's incorrect. The zinc does not form an alloy. If the coating is damaged, water and oxygen do not corrode the iron. That's true. Okay. The purpose of galvanizing is to prevent corrosion. Okay, even if the coating is damaged, the water and oxygen do not corrode the iron because zinc is more reactive than iron. Zinc is more reactive than iron. Okay? Zinc is a sacrificial metal and corrodes in preference to iron. That's correct. So these two are interlinked. Okay? This is the reason why it does not corrode the iron. Okay, so the answer is D. 25. Which diagram represents the arrangement of outer shell electrons of a noble gas? Okay, so a noble gas will have a full outer shell. Okay. So if we see here, the only one with a full outer shell is A. Because in the first shell you can hold 2 electrons, but the second shell has to hold 8, right? But here, in this one you only have 4 out of 8. This one you only have 6 out of 8. And this one you only have 7 out of 8. So it's incomplete shells. But A is the only one with a full shell. Okay? Which statements about the general properties of metals are correct? They are good conductors of heat and electricity. That is true. Most metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. Or I should say all metals. They have low melting points. That is incorrect. Okay, general properties of metals. A lot of metals have high melting points. Okay. They react with dilute acids to form salt and water. That is incorrect. They don't form salt and water. They react with oxygen to form basic oxides. That's true. Wait, sorry. Yes, that's true. They will form basic oxides when reacting with oxygen. Answer is B. Reaction of three metals and their oxides are shown. What's the order of reactivity of these metals from most reactive to least reactive? Okay, so firstly, let's see which is least reactive. So add dilute hydrochloric acid to metal. The least reactive one would not react to dilute hydrochloric acid. So therefore 3 has to be the least reactive. Therefore B and D is wrong because 3 has to be at the end. Okay. Now, which is the most reactive? So the most reactive one would actually be 2 because it does not get displaced by carbon, right? So if it gets displaced by carbon, it's actually less reactive. It will be a less reactive metal. Okay. For a more reactive metal, so this one, metal 2, you probably need electrolysis to extract the metal. Okay. So the answer is C. So 2 is the most reactive, followed by 1, followed by 3. Okay. 28. Three metal compounds, J, K, and L, are heated using a Bunsen burner. The results are shown. Colorless gas produced relights a glowing spin, so it's obviously oxygen. Colorless gas produced turns lime water milky. This is obviously carbon dioxide. No reaction. Okay. Which row identifies J, K, and L? So, in order to produce oxygen, you need okay. So when you heat magnesium carbonate, you get oxide plus CO2, right? So therefore, A and B is wrong because to get oxygen, you need to heat potassium nitrate instead. You cannot heat a carbonate to get oxygen, right? So next, between K and L, turns lime water milky. So they're both carbonate, so they will both turn lime water milky if you produce the colorless gas. However, sorry. Potassium carbonate does not. Potassium carbonate. So the answer is C because potassium carbonate does not produce CO2 when you heat it up. Okay, magnesium carbonate will, but potassium carbonate won't. Okay, so when you heat up potassium carbonate, you won't get carbon dioxide. So the answer has to be C because magnesium carbonate will produce carbon dioxide. Okay. The diagram shows the use and treatment processes of muddy river water. Which row identifies uses 1 and 2 and processes 1 and 2? Okay, so muddy river water, obviously. Between drinking and watering crops, you're obviously not going to use muddy river water to drink, so therefore the answer has to be either C or D. And for process 1, muddy to clear river water, you will have to first filter it. Okay, so the answer has to be D because process 1 is filtration followed by chlorination, which disinfects the water and kills all the bacteria and stuff like that. Okay, answer is D. The equation for the manufacture of ammonia of a Haber process is shown. Forward reaction is exothermic. Okay, so which row describes the effect of the stator change and yield of ammonia on the reaction rate and yield? Okay, so first step, let's see A. If you decrease the pressure, okay, so you decrease the pressure, you're using Le Chatelier's principle. Firstly, the effect on reaction rate. So when you decrease the pressure, the reaction rate will decrease because less collisions between molecules, right? So therefore, this is wrong. A is wrong, and yeah, A is wrong. Okay, next. Decrease in temperature will decrease the rate of reaction because the molecules will have less energy to move around and collide, right? So far is correct. Effect on the yield of ammonia increases. Okay, so if you decrease, so since the flow is negative, right? If you decrease the temperature, it would favor the it will favor the positive delta H. So it will favor the reactant side. Since it favors the reactant side, you will get less ammonia. So therefore, sorry, I did the opposite way around. Sorry. If you decrease the temperature, which means the temperature gets lower, the system wants to make the temperature hotter. So therefore, it will favor the forward reaction. It will favor the forward reaction because the forward is exothermic, which releases energy into the environment. So therefore, the yield on ammonia would be increased. So therefore, B is the answer. This is the correct answer. Fertilizers are used to provide 3 of the elements needed for plant growth. Which 2 compounds will give a fertilizer containing all 3 of these elements? So, the 3 elements is NPK. So we use NPK fertilizers. Okay, so which of these has all N, P, and K? So N, P, K. This is D. The flow chart shows part of the process for the manufacture of sulfuric acid and its electrolysis. So gas 1, 2, and 3. What are gases 1, 2, and 3? So this is contact process. So in the contact process, you are taking sulfur dioxide with oxygen to produce sulfur trioxide. So therefore, gas 1, 2, and 3 is sulfur dioxide, oxygen to form sulfur trioxide. Answer is B. 33. Which statements about sulfur dioxide are correct? Sulfur dioxide decolorizes acidified potassium manganate 7. So this is correct because it will be oxidized by the acidified potassium manganate. Sulfur dioxide forms when acid reacts with carbonates. That's incorrect because when acids react with carbonates, it will form not sulfur dioxide because sulfur dioxide will only form depending on what acid you use, right? Sulfur dioxide is used as bleach. That is true. Sulfur dioxide is used to treat acidic soil. That's not correct because sulfur dioxide is acidic to begin with. Okay, so sulfur dioxide has actually bleaching properties. Okay, so the answer is A, 1 and 3. What are the products when limestone is heated strongly? Okay, when you heat calcium carbonate strongly, you will get calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Okay, quite simple. 35. Structure of ester W is shown. Which role gives the name of ester W and the carboxylic acid and alcohol? Okay, so when you're doing naming, you have to name the alcohol part first, followed by the acid part. So if we cut, so first you have to cut the ester bond. So we cut it right here. This is the ester bond, right? To cut the ester bond, then we count the number of carbon. So first step, this section would be the alcohol. The alcohol section is a one carbon alcohol, so it will be methanol. Therefore, B and D is wrong. And since this side, this side is the carboxylic acid side, so it has 2 ethanol. It has two carbon atoms, so it will be ethanoic acid instead, right? And finally, when you're naming the whole thing, you have to name the alcohol part first and then the carboxylic part second, so it will be methyl ethanoate. Okay, answer is C. Ethanol is made industrially by the fermentation of glucose or by the catalytic addition of steam to ethene. Which statement describes an advantage of fermentation compared to catalytic addition? Ethanol is the only product in fermentation. That is not correct. That's definitely not correct. Ethanol will only be the product in addition of steam to ethene. Okay, fermentation uses a batch process, but catalytic addition is continuous. That doesn't describe an advantage. Okay, so this is not correct. So fermentation uses a higher temperature than catalytic addition. That is not an advantage, that's a disadvantage. So both of these are disadvantages. Right? Fermentation uses a renewable source, that's true. So therefore D is the answer. Some properties of colorless liquid L are listed. It boils at 65 degrees. A Okay, we cannot do anything with the information. When added to water, two layers form which do not mix. Okay, so that means it cannot be ethanol because ethanol is soluble in water. It does not react with sodium carbonate, so it cannot be ethanoic acid because it doesn't react. It has no effect on bromine water. It cannot be hexene because of hexene has the carbon-carbon double bond which reacts with bromine water. Okay. The answer is B, hexane. A molecule of compound P contains 2 carbon atoms and 4 hydrogen atoms. Okay, so which row represents P? Since it has 2 carbon and 4 hydrogen, it has to be ethene, right? It cannot be ethane because it has ethane has 6 hydrogen instead of 4. So A is wrong and A is wrong. The MR, okay, so the MR would be 12 plus 12, 12 plus 4, okay, would be 28, so therefore B is wrong. So between C and D, reacts with aqueous bromine, it does because it's a alkene. All alkenes will react with aqueous bromine. Okay, so answer is C. The reaction of ethanol with acidified potassium manganate is shown. What type of reaction is taking place? Okay, whenever you're using this, it will always be oxidation. Okay, every time you use acidified potassium manganate, it will always be oxidation. Finally, which polymer is a synthetic polyamide? The answer is nylon. Okay, this is a natural polyamide. Terylene is a polyester, and this is just this is just a polymer of ethene, right? This one has no nitrogen. Say polymer, the amide. Whenever you see amide, it must contain nitrogen. Okay, so polyamide, which one of these is a synthetic polyamide? Will be nylon. Okay, so that's it for this paper. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Ciao.